So we'll see how that goes. Hello, Scott and Lisa Cahill here, talking about the Oroville Dam this morning. One of the concerns that I have is that the liability produced by this dam remains. And much of what's taken place did little or nothing to abate that liability to the public. This is a severe and serious situation, and it has to be addressed in such a way that we get beyond this tenuous position that we find ourselves in now. So there was an article that kind of prompted this I just read that was dated February 13th in NBC News, and they listed what was happening at that point.
Well, we all remember on February 7th, the hole opened up in the principal spillway. At that point, the spillway was flowing about 35,000 CFS, and that water that was flowing out of it then had fallen during January, during the early to mid-January, in a storm that was a pretty normal winter storm for there. The level of the reservoir was in the flood control area. It was above their normal conservation pool. So they, for some reason, were letting out the water pretty darn slowly. And that turned out to be a real issue when the hole opened up, because then they needed to close the principal spillway and have a look at what was going on. That was the correct thing to do. But that caused the water coming in to back up to the point that, combined with the big storm that was coming along about the 9th, 10th of February, that there was flow over the emergency spillway, which eroded quickly and caused the evacuation of almost 200,000 people.
So to be clear, though, the operation of the dam was outside of the parameters that had been set for the dam by DWR itself. So they were operating with more water behind the dam than they should have had behind the dam by their own parameters.
Their regulation says to draw it down immediately, and they did not.
Alrighty, then the Friends of the River in 2005 made a recommendation, which has certainly been documented in the actions that took place shortly after February the 7th. And they had asked FERC to, in order for the license to be renewed for their generation of power, to demand that the emergency spillway be armored in some way so that there would not be a lot of erosion in the event of the actuation of the emergency spillway. And John Onendonk, who is a fellow I know, is a competent engineer, wrote an opinion, and in that opinion he said that in the actuation of an emergency spillway, that erosion of the soils downstream is acceptable. And John is correct in that statement, in that indeed the documents from pretty much everyone involved in dam safety allow for some damage to be done to an emergency spillway in its actuation. Now, I believe that John would have acted differently had he known the real situation with, in fact, I'm certain of it. There's no doubt in my mind. Had he known the real situation with the soils. And either DWR was unaware of the situation with the soils on their dam they've been running for half a century, which is remarkable, or they were aware and chose not to disclose it. And I'm not accusing anyone of anything. I'm just saying that if you operate a dam for 50 years, you should know what's going to happen if you actuate your emergency spillway. An emergency spillway should never have trees and things on it, which this one did. In many ways, they were not up to snuff with simple issues of dam safety, as well as some more difficult ones. What we heard after the fact, after the evacuation of 190,000 people, was that, first of all, we heard, well, the evacuation was unnecessary. Well, you know, you always hear that after an evacuation. Either a lot of people die and people say, should have done it sooner, or things are caught in time and it's saved, as was the case of this. It would have failed if it was just left to its own devices, I believe, with all my soul. And so we look to the sheriff and we say, geez, maybe he jumped the gun. No, he did not jump the gun. Not at all. We say, or they say, oh, this is a result of climate change. This event has absolutely nothing to do with climate change. They say this was an unforeseeable event. No, this wasn't even the largest event that this dam has experienced in recent history. This was not a large event by any measure. In fact, the design flood for this dam is an influx of 720,000 cubic feet per second. That's a lot of water. And in the actuality, the influx at this point was what, Lisa? I believe it was...
for the 2017, 100,000 CFS.
Yeah, 160,000 was the
160,000.
maximum inflow. So, and 100,000 was the maximum outflow. So we're not even in percentages. The OG Weir emergency spillway failed with 3% of its design flow passing across the weir. 3%.
So right now, as things stand today, and as things will stand once the repairs are done, you're supposed to be able to pass almost 17,000 CFS through the penstocks, through the hydro. But right now you can pass about 14,000. The river outlet is supposed to be able to pass 5,400. It can pass about 4,000 right now. The service spillway, the main spillway, is rated to pass 150,000 CFS. But remember that the gate structure has a number of cracks. It has, in our opinions, voids underneath it. It has some serious issues. So 150,000 CFS would not be a good idea. They have been keeping the flow 40,000 and under, and I think they probably have good reason for that. The emergency spillway is supposed to be able to pass 350,000 CFS, and we know the answer to that is 0. So adding up 14,000, 4,000, and 40,000, we get to 58,000 CFS that they can pass safely, and that will still be true when the rains come later this year.
So when the basin's full and we get a rain event of 60,000 cubic feet per second, the OG Weir will top and we will begin this cutback evolution that we began before, and we'll be right back where we came from. The dam, I say again, was designed for a peak inflow of 720,000 cubic feet per second. Now, we just said that it can actually take 58,000 cubic feet per second outflow. It's designed for a release or an outflow of 624,000 cubic feet per second. So we're at about, what, 8 or 9%. We can pass about 8 or 9% of the design flood, the flood and the rainfall event that the dam was designed to handle. That is not good. I think we all can agree. So if we have an event that's bigger than 8% of the design rainfall event, and therefore the design flood, the dam has very real potential of failing. That is disgusting, and that needs to be remedied. And that's what this discussion is about, is how do we get out of this liability situation that the dam produces, which I liken to an anvil hanging on a piece of dental floss above our heads.
So we know historically California has floods. They are an area that experiences heavy rain over the winter and then a dearth of rain over the summer. 1861 and 1862 was a very famous deluge that flooded about 3.5 million acres of the Sacramento and San Joaquin valleys. Remember our number of 58,000 CFS. That's what we can pass as we talk about this historical flood events. 2017, we had 160,000 CFS inflow. So let us hope another 2017 doesn't happen unless the pool is kept very low indeed, well below the amount that they're allowed to have. In 1995, they had flows between 80 and 100,000 coming in 3 different times, 3 different events in the neighborhood of 100,000. 1997, of course, was the huge flood that everyone remembers very well, and that had inflows of 280,000 with outflows of around 120,000. 2006 was a fairly wet year as well, with inflows of 130,000, outflows around 80,000. So normal to on the wet side years, it's very common to have a need to pass greater than 58,000 CFS.
So from that we can easily see that a normal storm that happens every few years, every couple years, will now fail the dam. It will cause an overtopping of the emergency spillway. If the principal spillway holds up enough to allow that to happen, which is questionable. The top of the emergency spillway is in bad shape. It suffers all the same things that the bottom of the emergency spillway suffered before. The gate structure is not in good shape, to put it lightly. The gates are galling. There's misalignment of the trunnions of the tainter gates. The seals aren't working properly. There are cracks manifesting and growing larger, ever larger as we watch them. And don't forget, the emergency spillway failed at 3% of its design flow. So obviously the emergency spillway is not competent to take any significant flow now. So we've backed ourselves, painted ourselves into a corner, if you will. So now we're going to spend hundreds of millions of dollars, $100 million a month there for a long period of time. Now we're working 20 hours a day doing something. But still, the anvil is hanging on the dental floss over our head. So what is the position of liability for the dam now? It's pretty much the same as it was the day after the evacuation. It's still the upper parts of the spillway have issues, serious issues, which I think involve porting, erosion of foundation, failure of foundation, failure of anchorage, and communication between charged water and the drain system beneath the upper part of the spillway. All serious things, all things that could fail the upper spillway. Now, someone called me a fearmonger recently in one of the posts, probably a troll, because goodness knows I've got their attention now, which flatters me. I'm not a fearmonger. I'm not afraid. What I am is genuinely concerned, and what I wish for are actions that will abate the liability to the public produced by this dam and other dams that are in similar situations. So what can we do to get there? Well, what we are doing is we're building the bottom half of the principal spillway of the things which are issues. And real quickly, they are these. The gate structure, bad problem. Certainly, if the gate structure fails, it will potentially produce V-notch failure of the crest. The upper spillway, and certainly if the upper spillway fails, it may produce a cutback V-notch at the principal spillway. The emergency spillway, which can't pass 3% of its design flood. And the bottom of the principal spillway. If the top of the principal spillway fails, the bottom of the principal spillway does absolutely nothing. I recently said that the bottom of the principal spillway, after it's been reconstructed, will be pristine, and people will go there to see where the dam used to be. The soils are highly erosive. The anchoring is incompetent. The rock is incompetent and rotten and of low recovery. And yet we're spending this money to go and rebuild the bottom of the principal spillway. When it's all done, the dam will be no safer than the day that we started the work. And in fact, we've let many precious days go by where we could have been doing something to abate the liability the dam produces.
You had talked about a separate gate structure.
That's what I'm about to talk about. My recommendation continues to be stepping over at the training wall between the emergency spillway and the principal spillway are more likely. I don't like working that close to a structure that's in that bad a shape, which it is, mark my words. Going over and taking a cable saw and cutting a section out of the OG weir and producing a brand new beautiful gated structure there, and producing a brand new beautiful spillway and starting at the top and working toward the bottom. Then if you get caught along the way with a severe storm, you can open up those new beautiful gates. You can leave those decaying garbage structured gates closed, and you can move a storm downstream safely in a metered fashion. If we get too much flow going through the gate structure, I have a real concern of the upper spillway failing or the gate structure failing. What's happening now as far as rebuilding the bottom of the spillway, someday it'll have to be done, but right now we're not abating any liability by doing that. So I don't understand why, but there are many things I don't understand why. I don't understand why they're blasting. I don't understand why they're removing rock in the cutback areas of the principal spillway when that rock is what is keeping that erosive stream from eroding further to the left toward the embankment. That's the last thing you want, is to blast that rock out of there. Leave it there. It's stable. What's there is stable, or was. Now we've blasted it all to pieces. So that's my thoughts. I wish very much that they were building a brand new spillway with gate structure, hopefully 2 crews, one working on the structure, one working on the sluiceway, from top to bottom, an independent structure where the gate structure and upper spillway can be demolished after the construction is completed, and we can step by step to greater and greater storm passage and safety and gently remove the anvil from the dental floss. Anything to add, Lisa?
No.
Thank you very much for listening to us. And if you would, if you enjoy these things, please give me a thumbs up and follow us on
subscribe on YouTube.
Yeah,
that
subscribe
helps
on
us,
YouTube.
With our searches, it helps us come up higher.
It helps a lot. It helps us a lot. I want people to be able to find this stuff. We've really tried hard to let people comment, and even to allow comments that are negative in their nature. The only exclusion, the only difference there is when people are obviously speaking for someone else in a way that's not productive. I think if someone has a different opinion, I want to hear it, and I think that the people that listen to what I say deserve to hear a differing opinion. Even people that disagree with me, I welcome that. What I do not welcome is calling names of myself or other people and that kind of thing, which is not productive. It doesn't get us into a conversation where we may be able to do better. And so, if you want a place where we can have an open discussion, an honorable discussion, please support me all you can that way, and I really appreciate it. Thank you very much for listening to us. Bye-bye.